God bless you guys. This is Sean here from Faith Brings Change. I just want to come on here and share some stuff with you again. You know, I know I'm kind of really colorful. Sometimes I'm too colorful. Like, I'll be honest with you guys. There's so many reasons to be depressed about it as a Christian. There can be all kinds of reasons to just be down all the time. I just don't feel that depression like a lot of others do. When you're serving the Lord, guys, when you're immersing yourself in holiness, you do have a lot of joy. I mean, I know I seem serious sometimes. I'm not always comfortable coming on camera, but I really do enjoy serving the Lord and everything, and we need that childlike faith and everything, guys. And I wanted to share, God was showing me this mystery of the beast, and I knew that the Ark of Noah was painted, it was pitch black. There's a parallel truth to this that we have not seen, and you may have not have ever seen it like this. This beast, he showed me that Jonah was cast into, that great fish. That's like what sin represents, being cast into the body of sin as in a beast, but the body spit him out. And so this guy, the Antichrist, is going to be cast into that body, so to speak, in his own way, and he's going to become a beast. He's not going to get spit out. The people that go into hell, it's like a shaped like a woman, they said, when they went into laying on her back and fire, and it has death and hell in it. But it's like a beast that it represents. I mean, it's like that body of sin. That's what it represents. And he got vomited out of that. And he was showing me this guy, Elliot Spencer. I don't know if you know guys from Pinhead, if you've ever seen Elliot Spencer. I can kind of show you him. He was showing me this guy that before he became Pinhead. This was psychological. I saw, like, in the dream, like, me almost as I was this person and shooting these people like they do at school, but it was almost like you were shooting them not physically but spiritually, and all these indictments would be written on them. And these kids were wearing white. They were trying to get free, but I wouldn't let them go. And it represented what they're teaching. What they're teaching the children of God, and what they're teaching people in schools, you know, the lies and everything. This guy, Elliot Spencer, you know, he has that kind of, that became the Pinhead. He kind of has that whole rod, that punch the clock kind of guy, you know, very eloquent, but he might seem like very strict. And they also call him the Black Pope, like spiritually black, you know, not physically. But I saw him almost with this rod, and he was teaching these people who were his subjects, you know. And I'll just give you an idea how he looks. I'll show you what he looks like, because this is interesting. Let me type this in, though. Elliot Spencer. And guys, Elliot Spencer that became the Pinhead, he'd give me a dream before, because there's actually a condition, guys, when you get really stressed. I had this happen to me. You may have had this happen to you before. When you get really stressed, it's like you feel pins and needles. And they say it's your nerves when they get close together when you're stressed, and you get that pins and needles thing. And so this whole pin and needle concept is like extreme fear and torture he underwent. And the story of this guy is he lost his faith in God. He fought in the first war, World War I, in like 1921, and he loses his faith, and somehow he gives himself over to pleasures. He loses his faith in God, gives himself over to pleasures, opens this box, which represents sin. Because there was another testimony of a person, guys, that Yeshua said, basically, when he rose again from the dead, they saw him take a box out of hell, and it represented the world's sin, took it to God, and somehow they erased it, or they removed it, or they cast it in forgetful sea to forgive people. But that box is that Pandora's box of sin, to open it, to see what sin is, and then the chains come out and make him like an undead, you know, demon or whatever. But his name, Elliot, is actually a play. Now I know God was showing me, like, these pins were going in my head, and I was, like, becoming this pinhead, because in my youth, guys, I got crucified in the mind. It's like the devil putting pins in my mind. It's like when you have those evil, bad thoughts, and they pervert you as a child. They crucify the joy and everything, so you can no longer tell the difference between pain and pleasure. And that's why people in their sin, they don't even get joy out of it anymore, when sin has a hardening effect. And so, Elliot Spencer's box of lament configuration, I'm going to first just show you Elliot Spencer, how he loses his face. So you can see what he looks like, because I'm going to tell you my dream about the classroom, how he's teaching these kids. And, you know, the stuff, let me see if you can see this. You know, this is the guy, hold on. That guy, Pinhead, you know, see, that's who he used to be. And that's like him demon-possessed, you know, what he became. And so, he somehow communicates to this girl, and it's supposed to be him in the past before he became Pinhead, trying to tell her how to stop him or something. So this is what he looked like. He looked like this in the classroom.
I don't understand. Am I dreaming this?
You have to help me. You will understand, and no, you're not dreaming. Forgive me. My name was Spencer. Elliot Spencer. Captain.
Joey Summersgill.
Well done. Brave girl. You've probably never shaken hands with a ghost before, am I right?
Captain Spencer? Elliot? What the hell is going on?
Hell is exactly what is going on, Joey. And we have to stop it. Will you walk with me a while? A dream of one war is a dream of all wars. Your dreams of finding your father let me find you and bring you to this place, this limbo between heaven and hell. I can't act in your world, Joey, but you can.
What do you want me to do?
There is a monster out there, Joey, and it's me. War pulled poetry out of some of us. Others, it affected differently. Oh, we're in India, by the way, and it's 1921. I was like many survivors, a lost soul with nothing left in which to believe but gratification. We'd seen God fail, so many dead. For us, he too fell at Flanders.
He's saying God abandoned him, basically. Or he thought that.
But it will require great courage.
I don't know that I have.
Joey, you just stepped through your window into another reality. You're stronger than you think.
Tell me what to do.
There is a gateway to hell through which he can be taken back. He wants to close that door forever.
Where is it?
Your apartment. It's the box, Joey. He has to destroy it. You must go back. You must let him come for it. You found the window, Joey. Use the box to bring him through it. Bring him here, to my dominion, where I have power.
But what if he takes the box from me?
He can't take it. It must be given to him. And that's where your courage will count. Because believe me, he can be very persuasive. Very inventive.
And guys, this guy basically represents a person that's lost hope and everything. And the war that we're in for our souls is kind of like that First World War. And he gets into this lament configuration box this other guy builds. And there's a book of Lamentations after the war. And Jeremiah is seeing all this stuff. And he weeps for his people. And he's sort of like a Jeremiah that would have failed and maybe gone and lost his faith in God after the war and everything. And after seeing Babylonians capture people. And it's representative of the war on our souls. And I'm going to get into the dream I had in a second. I saw him because this was a hell of a trip. And I'm not saying hell in a light way or in a swearing word. I'm saying I literally went to hell in the dream, like he was showing me this stuff. And I'm going to show you that in a second. But let me... Pinhead creation. I'm going to type... guys, this isn't for everybody, so if you're squeamish, don't watch it. I advise you not to watch it. Don't turn away from this if you can't handle this. This isn't for little children. If some of you haven't seen this, I'm going to just show you how the birth of Pinhead happened. And so here it is, and you saw what he looked like before. Hold on, let me... I got to skip this. Where it's going through. Hold on. I mean, this is the world I grew up in, guys. So I'm trying to use people to get out of these movies, stop watching them, these horror movies. This is like a Buddhist temple, and that's that false enlightenment movement. And that's how you see something's dark about it. It leads to hell, all these false religions. And this is after he's lost his faith in God, and he's stopped after World War III and everything. And he has no more faith. He got into pleasures, got into drinking, did all kinds of stuff, and then he found the box he got from a dealer. This is that box of sin, guys. That's what it represents, Pandora's box. It also represents this TV and the laptop, that evil worldly wisdom of Samaria that the world is drinking from. So you're going to see these visuals when you see the book in heaven, if you make it there. When you see books in heaven, guys, you can actually see the visuals on them. And so this is part of using this for prophecy, to warn people not to sin. And Satan is, he fell like lightning from heaven, so there's that lightning. And some of this, is, it was for what it affects back then, but it's pretty good for what to demonstrate, Satanism, how evil the devil is. See, that box is opening. It's like almost he's cracking the puzzle, or he cracked it. He spent hours and hours on this thing until he could get it to work. And maybe days, who knows. Just warning, guys, so... I mean, it's graphic, guys. I mean, and this is almost like this false enlightenment. I'll take you to crazy heights you've never known. Satanists are into this. And see, they're scratching in the dream. It was like being scratching on my head. He actually has the name of Elijah, guys. Elliot means the Lord is my God. They said it derived from Elijah. Spencer means dispenser of provisions. So now he's going to offer the devil's provision. And this is what it leads to. See? This is how he became evil. And I don't even know if I can go any further, because I don't know, he worships this creature called Leviathan, and you see this Pinhead character, he's very eloquent. He's one of those ones that is villains that is way up there with Jason and Freddy Krueger and all that stuff. But I had a dream of him as Elliot Spencer and the Brown, like the soldier. And he was like teaching, and he was walking, how he's walking back and forth. Like you see those soldiers, their hands behind them. And he has like a rod and he's teaching. And I saw a whiteboard and he was teaching them different things. I'm trying to see if I can remember everything. It was a whiteboard. I'll see if I can find it on here, because it's literally on my notes, I believe. It's going to pull up. And then I'll be able to show you. So let's see if it loads up right here, because I saw this today and I wanted to explain all this. I think I wrote the ephod of Elliot Spencer, but today was the 8th day I wrote the month of harvest in the Hebrew, the 8th month. 12/23, I woke up because at 2/23, that's my birthday. I was born February 23rd, and also February is the 12th month in the Hebrew, so 12/23 I was born. Woke up after a dream of me going into the principal's office at school, and I sat down on the left, not directly in front of it, because, I guess I was kind of nervous. There were 2 seats. There was one directly in front of the principal, one to the left, and I just wanted to sit to the left. And I was trying to wonder, why am I in there for? Because I'm in this vision. And I just had a concept of feeling God put it in my heart to ask what I was supposed to ask in the dream as a principal. This guy was on his phone. I realized he was a Lord after that. But ask him to restore a yearbook of the school, the students in school, restore the yearbook. And some kind of book for him, for the school and the students. It was like me restoring their lives, basically. Maybe telling the stories about them and encouraging them and just restoring. There was something about the school. And he went out of the room not answering me. And I almost felt heartbroken at first. Like, has he ignored me? What's happening? And then all of a sudden I saw a printer machine turn on, like it was printing out pages, almost like for a book. And so he had answered me. And I wrote at that time, it was 12/27 and that whole 227 thing. If you're on here, guys, you know it. It's the numbers that he gave me. That you're just gonna have to look that up, guys, later. I can talk about that another time. The alarm clock was 2:27. I don't have time for that now. But and then it turned 12:30, and that's 3 minutes after that. This is related to these 3 days of darkness, guys. This stuff very well may happen, I'll just say, in 2027. It very well may be. And it very well may be over in 2030. I don't know. But at 12:30, while half awake, and also if it did end, you know, it's gonna end in the month of December for sure. That's when the 2 witnesses are killed. And that's the time when they send each other gifts. That's in December. That's the 12th month. So at 12:30, while half awake and dozing out, a vision of a big hand holding a little chip in the form of a, I sensed it was like the chip, but it was like a shot glass of wine, and it was like that the devil's wisdom was his mind, this microchip. The mark of the beast was the devil's wisdom, and it was like in the form of a 6, you know, for the devil. And, yeah, and I saw... Let me see if I can... I wrote, this may sound weird, but I saw Doc Ock's voice in a teacher tone kind of way say, getting comfort. And I know this sounds weird, but when you hear in the spirit, they say you can actually see what you hear. It's hard to explain. You can see sound, guys. You can see sound. You can hear color. Your senses are different in the spirit realm. Everybody that's died and gone to hell, or heaven, I should say, or even hell, they say your senses are like that. They're more heightened. So what you hear, you can actually see. And it was almost a parallel. On one hand, it was the Lord saying, are you getting comfort? I'm showing you, I'm going to restore people's lives through these things. On another hand, it was showing me a twisted truth of the devil. You know, this whole Doc Ock thing. He has, you know, the whole Ock representing the octopus of the 8 tentacles and the false salvation. This is going to relate to a false ark and a false salvation. You're going to see the devil. And it also relates on the parallel. God is saying, but I'm saving my people also. So remember what I told you about how God gets in the body of these characters to bring them down and also to bring comfort. So on one hand, you see 2 messages, this duality of him. One hand showing his salvation for his people, and one hand he's showing the destruction of the people that follow this false principle of this school, this false one. It's a parallel of both truths I wrote. The little chip I wrote of that glass of wine is for the mind of the beast, which is the mind of the Antichrist. The big hand who made the 6 is for the big 6 as a 6th day, and I wrote 666, and you know, there's a mystery to that, guys, that I'm not going to talk about yet, but because he revealed some certain things to me, and we were created also on the 6th day. And he had the eloquence of Elliot Spencer's slow pleasure of pain, I wrote, when he said getting comfort, you know, and that's kind of how Doc Ock spoke. He was very eloquent. He was just like Elliot Spencer, the way he spoke, and yet also it was a parallel of the Spirit of the Lord and his word and his voice, asking me if I was getting comfort, because he was comforting me over my past failures in the past. I'd gotten out of that a long time ago, but he's still, your mind remembers these things, so you just need to be renewed. I also remember at the age of 6, for that number 6, that was the first time I'd received great comfort and lifting up from God and joy, and that was the same year also I was rejected, and it crucified that joy, you know. And so he's taking me back to that school to kind of restore things and show how all this stuff happened. And this vision is powerful, guys, when you get to the Elliot Spencer part. But just hang on. In my thoughts, it was like Peter Parker's school, because the whole, you know, Peter Parker, and he was a student of Doc Ock. In this dream, it was like Doc Ock was a principal, you know, until a false ark, a false salvation, a false teaching. I saw the Green Witch of Oz. She was in a corner, and she ran off. She was like in a corner, the Witch of Oz. She ran off. And she was curdled up as a witch in a corner with a grin, and she ran off to the left. And then she took a broom, and I wrote a parallel. I saw her at some point turn to Freddy, because Freddy was a janitor, and he actually did the Wizard of Oz scene going on the broom. But I wrote that I saw I saw her turn into him, and he rode out in a dark blue sky, and it was raining and storming, and he laughed, and I saw his broom turn into a mop, mopping the floor with the wicked, and that whole flood thing. And so he was a janitor, and so that's why he was using that broom and they were paralleling him, between him and the witch of the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the Wizard of Oz. There's also that whole Green Goblin type in Spider-Man, and I don't want to get into spiders and witches, how they connect, guys, because you wouldn't understand that. I'm just going to go through it as quickly as I can. And those were the messes he made. I wrote about, the mop and the flood and everything, trying to clean up the wicked, shed their blood, and just, he's so sadistic. The school Freddy connected to the factory. I'm trying to see. Oh yeah, in the horror movies, Freddy was like a kind of a teacher also, and he appear in their school, and he would connect the school of Nancy's mind into the boiler room of his dreams, or the boiler room where he was killed in. And it was a factory where he was a janitor, but he turned it into a full fear factory. And I wrote that these characters were born, that Robert Englund, who played Freddy, was born on June 6, 1947. Toby, who played Peter, was born 28 years later on June 27th, 1975. And I already brought up about that 6/27 before, and I'm not going to go into that if you don't know it yet. June 6 is a 6 month. 6/6 Freddy was born, and 6/27 Peter was born. Take those 5 numbers together, and what do you get? 666, 27. So Mark of the Beast is also related to this number 27. It's related to it. Robert Englund is 40 years older than me, I wrote. He'll be 80 years old, I believe, in 2027. He's 40 years old, while Peter is 12 years older than me, and that's Revelation 12. And we're going to be going into spiritual wilderness in Revelation 12, like 40 years, how they did. But for us, it's going to be 42 months. Come to find out, there were an extra 2 months that they were already in the wilderness, the people of God. So they really were in there 42 years, if you think about it. Or I should say not an extra 2 months, extra 2 years they were in that. Before that already, before they were given the 40-year sentence. So that was 42 years combined. I wrote some things about the witch actress. Her name was Mary Jane, or her mother's name was Mary Jane, and Peter Parker, and the witch. And God gives me these things, and He shows me these things. Her mother's name was Mary Jane. I'm gonna get to the part, guys, with the classroom and Elliot Spencer. Just hang in there with me. Her mother's name was Mary Jane. So it was like Peter really dated the Wicked Witch's mother, It's kind of like that. It's showing that. And a mother can represent a body, a spiritual body. And this is esoteric Satanism they do in these movies. There was a guy, Buster Keaton, that she was associated with. And I wrote not the guy from Batman, because Buster Keaton is also a stuntman for Batman and all the Dark Knight movies. You're going to see how that connects also. He was called a dead stone, or this guy, and remember, Peter means stone. So this guy, this woman who's associated with, whose mother's name is Mary Jane, this is the actress that played the Wicked Witch of the West. Her name is Margaret. Her mother's name was Mary Jane. She worked with a guy who was called like a dead stone. He even played in a Peter movie, and so he's associated with, like I said, her mother's name is Mary Jane. She's associated with the guy who played Peter. He played Peter the Great. She was in a movie with him that was called The 3 Ages, for those 3 days of darkness and everything. And it said that, the place said that it was associated, this is interesting, with Samson and Daniel. Samson and Daniel. And the book of Daniel is related to Last Days and Samson also. Those pillars being pushed over like the 2 witnesses. And you're going to see other things. It was a Stone Age storyline, and there you go. The Peter means a stone. I'm going to get into this. I wrote Keaton. Also, Buster Keaton is also not only for that guy. She worked with Buster Keaton for the guy that did the Batman stunt double. And the original Batman was Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton, I wrote. And also she, the man Buster Keaton that's associated with her, was with the woman called Dorothy Sebastian. And that's like Dorothy Gale. She was a type of Dorothy Gale. This Dorothy Sebastian actress even played a Dorothy in The Devil's Apple Tree, and you see apples being offered, them picking apples, and in the movie of Oz, that represents sin, you know. You see Judy Garland, and she was either born or died in 622, and so there you go. That's at 6 again. Yeah, you're gonna see, like, if you know me, guys, 622, 627, all these numbers are like related. I've already known this. And she was even, it's a location area that movie was shot in Kansas. You know, that Dorothy woman, that Dorothy actress, you know, that played Dorothy, she played Judy Gaylord and this other one in his First Command movie. And that's like Judy Garland. It's a play on her words. And she was even, the location of the movie was it was said to be in Kansas. This is there's some of these dreams that are, some of these symbols I'm going to put together later. I just am writing what I saw. I'm just going to tell you what I saw, and I'm going to get into this thing, and just wait here, guys, because this dream, when it gets to Elliot Spencer part, is real crazy. I remember seeing, dreamt of a white cat. This is kind of weird with yellow eyes and occultism. There's stuff called white magic, and people think that they're doing this innocent, harmless little witchcraft. It's not going to hurt anybody. It's innocent. You remember the White Witch of Oz, guys? And it's almost like they say that white witches, it's okay. You have Christians doing tarot cards and things. They're doing yoga in Christianity. This is that false stuff that appears to be innocent. The cat had yellow eyes, and there's this yellow-eyed demon in this Winchester's Supernatural series that they hunt down. But then the dream changed, and I was in a classroom, and I saw myself holding a gun to these kids and shooting them. And it wasn't me doing it. It was like the person doing that, killing them with their bad lessons, you know, shooting them, holding them hostage. And you see shootings in schools and everything. It was like I was seeing through the killer's eyes. It was he taught them a bad lesson, I wrote. They had white shirts, and when I went to shot, red words would appear on the white, you know. This was disturbing behavior, because there's a disturbing behavior movie who turns the kids kind of evil. I was hearing a tune by Cell Dweller, this band, saying "Let Me Go," and it was like the kids were wanting to leave, you know. They found out something was wrong about it, and I wrote it was 2:20 at that time, and then when I was writing through some other things, it said 2:27 right when I looked up. Basically, I had a vision when I lay back down of Elliot Spencer, who was Pinhead. I saw it carved into his hand, just like this picture. You see the carvings right here, guys? Picture the lines of a pentagram being carved into my hand. I saw, or not Two-Face, I'm sorry, Pinhead. You know, Pinhead. I don't know why I keep saying that. Pinhead, that was Elliot Spencer. I saw him, his white hand, you know, Pinhead with the pins in the head and everything. I saw the pentagram in his hand. And he had an apple, and he threw it to one of the girls, you know. He had an apple, and so an apple, like teaching, you see this in school, and the teacher's pet thing. And I wrote, he had like a rod in classroom, and he was that kind of like punch the clock kind of guy, very strict and eloquent, and he captivated the people. And he used a whiteboard and wrote and read to teach them like how to give up on life. The lesson was all about what he did in his life, how to give up, how to be an atheist, basically. And they're teaching people atheism in church, like how there's no God, you know, just indulge your pleasures and all this. He was teaching them all that. The pleasure, you know, just indulge your pleasures. And he even did, this may sound crazy, guys, but I'm not exaggerating this. He even did the swastika sign, like from Adolf Hitler, and he kind of has that look. And I wrote Hitler, who is now burning in hell for that. And I had a vision of Hitler burning in the oven, because they said this hell testimony. This guy drank water and died. He saw Hitler literally burning in hell, and you can a lot of people know that testimony. Melvin something, I can't remember. He saw people burning, and among them was Hitler just burning and screaming, and you could see his skeleton, but his face, you know, he's burning. The classroom was at the feet of Elliot Spencer. I saw lit up. Oh yeah, at the feet. Now in this classroom, when he was teaching them this, and I saw him do the swastika, fire went up from the classroom, guys. This is crazy. Fire went up, and it just burned the classroom. Like, it started to set everything on fire beneath their feet, and he wasn't being burned by it, you know. The classroom at the feet of Elliot Spencer I saw lit up, and he warped into the Pinhead. As the scales fall off the kids' eyes, they could see him for who he truly was. They've attended these classes and been taught to give up. They're going to these false teachers, and it's also not only in the schools, it's in Christianity. It's like a schoolhouse, and he's teaching them. It's like Elliot Spencer, a false Elijah, is teaching them to give up, to be sinners, to just do whatever, to don't believe in God. And the whiteboard turned black, and to a blackboard was burning, and he was writing with white chalk flame, like he was writing in flame the lesson. And then the doors were locked, I saw, and they tried to get out. The kids were trying to jiggle to get out of the room because it was on fire, and they couldn't get out. And he was like, you know, like he said in the Pinhead, the suffering, such sweet suffering. You know, he said it just like he did in that thing. And I saw the class spinning as it turned into the Hellraiser box. And now think about this for Oz, guys. I saw it spinning, and some tornado blew out the windows, and it started to lift up, and it started spinning around like in Dorothy's Wizard of Oz. But now this house became like not only the House of Oz, but it was still the classroom inside, but it became the Pinhead. Elliot Spencer's, he configured it to the Lament configuration box. And so the classroom was like that, and it was spinning around just like you see it in Oz. And people were getting burned and screaming. And then at some certain point you saw it, you know how you see in the movie an overhead shot and it lands down straight on the camera? Well, it's like I saw a shot like that of the Lament configuration land down, and it stopped, and he's like, this is where you get off. And the elevators open, and they were in some dark place, like that scene you saw of Elliot Spencer on the war battlefield. But it was in hell, you know, and you could just see the sky. And it was this endless road, but you had this, he said, follow the yellow brick road, and he started trying to see, laughing, basically sadistically, and they were trying to run and follow this yellow brick road to get off. And so this is a demonic version of Oz, basically. It's a place in hell. And it was 237 at the time I saw, guys. And there's a room 237 in The Shining, of like a fornicators in there, and it represents an evil. That's where they get their pleasure from, sex and all these sin and everything. And so I wrote, that was interesting, right when I wrote that follow the yellow brick road thing. And so it's evil. And he said, oh, if I only had a heart. He was mocking them, the whole Tin Man thing, and then he laughed heartlessly at them, and they were running all over the place. I saw the road started to, when they were running down it, that yellow brick road started to twist and turn, and then at some point it rolled and it turned, and then it became, you saw a big gigantic Sherman of the second Candyman in the new remake, the second Candyman. Remember in the yellow jacket he has? It's like the string of that was like the train of his robe. It turned into the yellow brick road. Now it's it's the jacket of the Candyman, the bottoms of it. And it just turned, and he turned around, and he was like a gigantic Candyman, and his messed up, gored up face with blood all over it, and honey. And he was a big giant, and he turned to reveal himself, and he hooked them back and forth. He was just chopping them up, and they were below him, just chopping them up and laughing. And so that yellow brick road they were turning down into was really the Candyman's jacket. And he just knocked him off his yellow jacket, you know. And that's that evil wisdom for the honeybees, the yellow jackets, you know, the bad wisdom they're following. They're following the path of the devil, guys. And when they got off and fell on the ground, they landed on a gigantic round mirror. And you can see that round makeup mirror of the women. And they see the Candyman appearing through that. I saw that. And then all of a sudden it was in the hand of Jackie, that witch from Wizard of Oz. She played the remake of the witch. She had it in her hand. And I wrote about, you know, and this Candyman spirit represents a sexual lust for the world and just lust for sin in general, but there's sexual connotations. And Jackie was a very fornicator, basically, on that show, that 70s show. And she was like, you know, as a witch, mirror, mirror upon the wall, who's the most hideous of them all? And she was screaming, I am! And she took the mirror with which they landed on, because it was a gigantic mirror and she had a gigantic hand, and she just closed it over it real fast and crushed them. And she's like, curse you all, curse you and your pretty little faces. You know, she was saying that, curse you and your pretty little faces. I mean, she was saying this. I can read it better when I do this. This is a very rough version of the dream. It's just, I got it. You don't write down in detail prophetically at first. You just get the things he was showing me, and crushed it with them in there. And then they were in hell, and she, let me see. They slid down. You're going to see at the end of this, I counted the number of demons that I saw in the dream, that it goes from one to the other to the other. This is a lesson of Elliot Spencer. He's teaching them to give up on life, showing them the horrors of hell. And she crushed it and crushed them on it, and then she opened it and they just slid off, you know, like crushed. Because in hell, you can break all your bones, you can be flattened, and you can reform. And they just slid off. And it's like they're falling into darkness, and they're in hell. They land on the floor, then the floor starts to quake of hell. And sink like a canopy. It quakes, and then it falls in, and then it sinks, and it turns into a web, like a web of a spider. And you see those glass pieces from that mirror that they were laying on when they fell out. So when she flipped them off, or I know that sounds funny, when she turned it over and they flipped off of that thing, all the glass pieces came off with them. So now they came off, and they literally, oh yeah, when they landed on the ground of that floor in hell before the thing became a web, all those pieces came in. Some of them stabbed them, like impaled them, and they were screaming. And then it just, the ground started quaking, and then it went down to another level, and there was like a spider web canopy. This is for that worldwide wisdom, you know. And the honeycomb is like a web, kind of, but it's that evil wisdom, you know, the worldwide web, the fullest of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's what the Candyman and that stuff represents. And remember the witch, you know, she was eating that apple, turned her into that. That's what the body of Satan is turned into, like a woman, you know, that green witch, you know. And those were her children. Those were her members that got put into that body of Satan. She was abusing, and she's like Jezebel also. And so it fell down, it turned into the canopy of the spider. Those glass pieces I saw were somehow pulled out, land in the air. They were pulled out somehow, and they landed in the air, which were controlled by Elijah Glass. And Elijah Glass was a character played by Samuel L. Jackson in the Unbreakable movies. And Elijah Glass, he was a bad guy who basically, he was so weak, his bones would break. He had a certain condition that he would always break. They called him Glass because his bones broke like glass. And he wanted to find a savior, like somebody that was that didn't break like him. And it was almost like he was trusted in some other god. And you're going to find out that in a second. Idolatrous, wanted to see somebody to save him. And he searched all his life, and he ended up causing train accidents and bad things to happen, killing a lot of people, just to see that one guy that would survive. And at the end of the movie, it was Bruce Willis, and he was the overseer. You know, I call him Unbreakable Man. He was called the overseer in the Split movie. I never saw that, but you know, he appeared in that one. And so after it turned into this canopy, somehow Elijah manipulated the glass, and they were controlled by him. I saw his bad face looking in. The glass started to come up and rise up out of the ground and became like mountains, you know, like high places. And also that glass represents the reflection of the law, that people are condemned under the law. When they sin in the law, they're no longer under grace. They're condemned by that law. They're seeing their own reflection, because people in the body of Christ, when they sin, they say, I'm just a sinner, I'm just a sinner. Satan is demonizing people to look at what they did yesterday. Instead of getting them over them to stop that, God wants you to forget about that. And so how Satan controls them is like by that Elijah, you know, character, that kind of type, you know, that kind of type of demon that's a false god, getting you to look at your sin, say we're just horrible sinners, and those mountains of glass, those high places. They can't get over the sin in their life that say we're just poor sinners. They can't say I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, because they're surrounded by those mountains. They're spiritually in these hells. They're being tormented in these different ways spiritually already. You know, with the Candyman, the false wisdom, they're walking on that yellow brick road, think it's going to give them life. It's leading to the Candyman, you know. He's catching them like fish with his hook, you know, that hook for fishing and everything. And so anyways, Elijah, these mountains come up after this. And I wrote their own cursed reflections as a law of red, like Freddy written upon them. And Freddy was Freddy Krueger, you know, a peaceful ruler, so-called. But he tells you you're just sinners and you can't overcome this stuff because he wants you to wind up where he is. He's a perverted demonic spirit. You could see Spider, because that was a spider web, and I started to see reflections of him all over in those mirrors. That false stone, that false spider is a representation, guys, of the occult and witchcraft. It's a symbol of fear. Appeared in those reflections. And you were seeing different versions of him throughout the multiverse. Like when in one version of the comic, he became a man spider, a total beast of a spider. And one, he became Spider Carnage, and he was just laughing wickedly at these people as they were maimed and everything. And he and the other Spider-Man would go in on that web, and they feasted on these people's flesh, you know. They feasted on their flesh, and then the spiders turned smaller and just ran out. They scattered, you know, from all parts of the room and ran off. And those people were laying there maimed, those kids. And then their parts healed as if they, you know, they were laying there crying, their parts healed. And then I saw the clown crab spider, because there is that connection of it again, guys. And the spider, like Spider-Man, it branches off into this. I wrote, which is really Peter in the same person, because this is a demon, unclean spirit. These are all connected to this web, guys. All these demonic demons, and Satan is just prophesying this. Then after a time of this, their heads, I wrote, I think from what I remember, they were chopped off and they were bagged by the Horseman, because they're all got gored up, and the Horseman was running from them, looking for their head. They were looking for their heads that were chopped off. You could see them running like bodies, running without heads, you know, chopped off, cut off from the Lord, because the Lord is supposed to be their head. They're cut off from the direction of the Lord. And I saw their bodies and the head were screaming in the bags, because they say in hell, people that died literally said people, if they had their head cut off, they'd start running all over the place. Their body would feel pain. Their head over in some other place would also feel it. Every part would feel it. No matter how scattered your parts are, you would all feel it. I don't even know how that works, but because I've never been disembodied like that. None of us have, but in hell it's like this, guys. So this is a huge warning dream. And then I saw him take a flaming pumpkin, because you see the pumpkin for the head. It represents a head of harvest, an evil head. You know, stuffing it with just nothing and setting it on fire, the devil's fire. He set it on top of their heads, like how Headless Horseman would put that pumpkin on his head. He put it on top of their heads. And the fire in that pumpkin traveled to their entire bodies, lit up their bodies, and now they're on fire. And the fire spread to their whole bodies, but it didn't consume them. I mean, they were still alive. And then I saw a version of, I saw Ghost Rider's hands on a bar, you know, like from his perspective, you could see these two bars, like a camera angle, almost like a movie. And then I saw the lower part of his leg, his foot, you know, and then the wheel, like you see in movies, from his point of view, looking over his shoulder down all the way to those people, and he just rode off like in fire, like, and you could hear that this engine sounded angry, like a beast roaring, you know, the furious engine. And he drove toward them, and the motorcycle went straight into those people, and ran them over, and it went into that fire where they were burning, and it exploded, and all that metal went into them and hit them. And while it did, he jumped over them off of it, and he flipped, did some kind of flip, and and he wrapped multiple chains around them, and they had thorns on them. He would just rip them off, and they would just shred them. And then after that, and I'm going to tell you, because this is from the book of Galatians, guys, the number of these demons. I'll tell you in a second. The Magneto then appeared, because they had all that metal in them, remember? And it's like he lifted them up. Magneto, like from the cartoon with the white hair, he looked like the cartoon version of him. He lifted them up, and their bodies were lifted up off the ground by the metal that was in them he was controlling. They talk about how sin, you know, this Mary Kate Baxter saw breastplates of metal or iron in them, and it said, I'm a fornicator, I'm here for fornication, I'm here for adultery. The demons would implant these things on them and their spiritual souls. Whenever they were in sin, they would implant these things in them. They were encrusted in them. And it's like having a hard heart to where the Holy Spirit can't prick you because you have a heart of stone and that metal on there. That hard, cold heart that over time it becomes ice. It becomes like iron. And it's like your own will, iron will against God. So you have your own authority. You're not going to listen to any correction from anybody. And so he's controlling that metal in them that's stuck in them from the Ghost Rider's, motorcycle. And that's for a ministry also. When you have cars or motorcycles, it's the ministry of the Ghost Rider, the spirit of vengeance and ministry in their lives. And they've given themselves over to vengeance. They're like, don't correct me. And I dealt with this today, guys. A girl did not want to listen to me. And so Magneto lifted them up into the air. And this is almost like a big, spacious place you can picture in hell. And almost like desert and skyline black or different colors when it would change into different parts in the dream. And God was showing me the various levels of dimensions of Satan's torture. And as he lifted them up, you could see almost like a camera angle around him when he lifted them up, you know, like around him showed his full body like in the comics. And he was just standing there hovering in the air, laughing wickedly. And then he was like floating in the air, controlling. He lifted them up and he just slammed them back down on the ground, broke all their bones. And after he did that, they landed hard into some water, but it was shallow enough to hit. And then I saw the Hydro Man from Spider-Man pulling up that water with his hands, and that's like the flood of Egypt, the flood of their fears, everything. And he just lifted that up, and he was controlling it. And he shot like whirlwinds of that, like, you know, swirling tornadoes of water back and down in them, hit them and consumed them. And it was breaking their bones and everything. It was so much water pressure. And they were drowning also, but they could never die. They were also, he let them be consumed in it. And then when they were floating in it, I saw Thor's hammer come up, you know, and he's a demon that's, Thor's really a demon. And lightning came up into that thing, and he electrified it, and he electrocuted them, and they were screaming. And that, the hammer is like the word of God, guys. And so the devil's word, the devil's false word. And, you know, Satan fell like lightning from heaven. And that false light, you know, the shining, I told you about all that, that false light of the devil, he masquerades himself like an angel of light. And that came down upon them. And then Electro came in, and he lit them up. He helped Thor do this, you know. He helped Thor basically charged, caused the lightning to come down. Electro kept it all. He just did everything with that and caused them to be electrocuted in horrible ways. And then they were being electrocuted. And then at some point on the floor, they were all laying on, I saw like a big visual. You picture this entire frame as a floor, and they're all in this. I saw it pull out to that frame, and it showed it was an electrical card that Gambit was holding. Again, another gigantic hand. And another gigantic demon. Gambit, the Cajun, cage bars of metal cells. I need to see, there was some concept of his name Cajun to represent him like a prison, you know. And he charged that card with them on it, you know, as a floor, because at first it was a floor, but the camera zoomed out and it was a card in his hand, and he took it and he threw it, and exploded. It exploded, and it pulled out, and it landed on, and you zoomed out, and you have another gigantic demon, the Wolverine demon, and he was angry fighting with Gambit. They were both fighting these, and Wolverine was just stabbing this card with all these kids on it, you know, that exploded. He was just stabbing it, and it was destroying them. Then the claws, as he was stabbing, you were seeing it zoomed in, it pulled out. It was Freddy Krueger's claws, and he was stabbing them all over. And he took his 4 fingers like them, and he plugged it into them, 4 fingers of the knife hands, and they became like shish kebabs. And this was really in a scene of hell, by the way, guys, from a testimony. The demons were eating them like shish kebabs on their hands. He said, which one of these fools should I eat first? That's what they said. I mean, this is sick, but they literally cook people. They're gigantic demons in hell. And then I saw the shish kebab on the fingers. I saw some grappling gun, four arms grab it, like the arms of a Batman. It was like a grappling gun, but it was 4 things, and it pulled the people off the fingers. You could picture like they're on the fingers, and the grappling gun comes from the opposite direction and just pulls it off. They were pulled off them by the Batman, and they went back into this. Let me see. And I saw they went into the Dark Knight's clutches, and it's like his body was like a tornado of black kind of thing. And they went into that Dark Knight, so to speak, you know, like outer darkness representing. And they swirled, and they were tumbling down it like into the tumbler, like a tornado. And he had a tumbler car also, but they were tumbling down into this darkness. Remember I said when they shot out, his grappling arms pulled out? Well, there were chains coming out. They were in the center of that darkness was a little box, and this is picked up where the vision left off at the beginning of it. And those grappling guns turned into the chains of the Pinhead, and there's 4 of them, because it's almost like also Doc Ock. He had 4 tentacles, but you might say, why is there not 8? Well, because guys are 4 limbs. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're broken up into 2 parts. You know, the 2 parts of the arm that bend, 2 parts of the leg that bend, you know, and everything. Those all together make up 8 parts. And so that's like the 8 souls in the ark and his false demonic ark. And so those arms pull out straight the box. They came to fetch all the people from those tortures and pull them back into the darkness at the center of it, almost like in the eye of the hurricane. And these chains are receding back into the box. And so now they're being pulled back straight into the middle of the darkness where the box is, you know. And yeah, they're pulled into that in the middle of it. And let me see. And then that box turned into the House of Oz again, and it turned back into that classroom, and it sit down, and the waves came out, and it receded back in. And you saw all of a sudden the visuals coming back again, because Elliot Spencer taught them a bad lesson, and it was like a psychological trip on their mind. They were still physically on Earth, but their souls were experiencing this. It was like out of body or in the body. They were in the body, but they were experiencing this stuff. Like their mind was almost like hallucinating. He was torturing them in their mind, basically. And then when those things went back and pulled them back into that box, now they're back in the classroom again, and it's appearing. And you see that tornado of blackness that where I told you they're swallowed up in that darkness. That tornado is going out of that house now, and it's setting it down like that tornado of Oz. And that box turns, and it just sets down. And I saw the chains going back from the Pinhead. He was up at the front of the class. And after they were pulled in, those chains, they were coming directly from even him, his body. The chains went back into him as Pinhead, and he turned back into Elliot Spencer, you know, with the... turned back into Elliot Spencer. And have you ever seen Doctor Strange, how he's lifted up, how he's in the Earth realm? Picture it like this. He's in the Earth realm, and he's pulled up into all those different dimensions, and he just set down like it's nothing. That's kind of what it was. Like he astral projected. He messed with their mind, tormented them, pulled them out of their astral forms out to torture them. And he sat back down, and he turned back into Elliot Spencer. And then as he did that, the bell rang. It was a normal sunny day. The bell rang. Right when he got that done, the chains come back on him. The bell rings. They take off running, and he's just smiling. Like, you know, he taught them a real lesson. And it's like God's just... I know Yeshua was animating the body of him. He's teaching people not to sin anymore, to not follow that beast. They ran out. And he's like, all right, lads, that'll be it for the day. I mean, that's what he said, something like that, you know, I believe. They ran out into the halls, kind of raised an eyebrow, you know, laughing, like, kind of like, he was kind of amused by it, but he wasn't really, like, smiling. He wasn't, like, laughing hysterically. He was almost like a calm, you know, smile, like, you know, like, you know, something like that. And I could see a flash, and then I woke up, and I heard, don't sin, don't eat the fruit, don't play with the box. Lesson learned. And so I went back to count the number of those demons, and that was 17 of them, guys. 17 of them. God was controlling this vision clearly. That's the 17 works of the flesh. It was a college. I remembered it was a like a drug trip they were having. I remembered in Vietnam, they spoke of, in World War I, they spoke of being drugged up and morphine and them having bad trips. And so he was like giving them his bad trip in war and teaching them to give up on life. And I wrote about the 17 works of the flesh. And each one of these, I took based on the order of those demons I saw them in, guys. And these demons fit perfectly into this order. This is what's crazy about this vision. So you're going to hear the Bible read, Galatians 5:19, but under it you're going to hear the demons inserted by the places, you know. Galatians 5:19, now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery of Candyman, because he was the first one I saw on that yellow brick road after they were taken into hell and they got off. Adultery of Candyman, and remember, Candyman of the original, guys, he was an adulterer. He took another man's wife and he was killed for it. That was a sweet candy, her flesh. Adultery of Candyman. Number 1, fornication of the Wicked Witch. And because Jackie, she was known to be a fornicator on that 70s show. And kind of, you know, these celebrities in real life were like that. And she was all over Oz, you know, that she ate this apple. She was kind of just another, you know, into fornication. Number 2, uncleanness of venom, you know, unclean things that proceed out of your mouth. Yeshua said it's not what goes into your mouth that can defile you, but what comes out of your mouth, you know, that uncleanness of venom. I did see venom because I forgot to mention, but when she was swallowing them up, she actually put them in her at some point. I believe she had a mouth like venom and carnage. And so she had a mouth like venom. And the lasciviousness of carnage. And so like I said, venom is that unclean spirit. The lasciviousness of carnage, because that false grace, guys, of carnage, you're shedding innocent blood when you sin, guys. Trampling the blood of Christ, you know, it's carnage. And it's lasciviousness, because carnage is a perverted spirit. It's like perverting grace. He's a perverted spirit. He said, all I've ever wanted was carnage. And it's almost like he's saying it as sick purity, basically. And then the idolatry of Elijah Glass, I wrote, because he played God with other people's lives. And so I lined up each of these demons. I saw them with the orders of these, and they fit perfectly. Because he was trusting in a superhero like God. He caused all kinds of train accidents to see who would be an unbreakable superhero opposite of him, almost to save him sort of from his bad life, you know, to give him hope. There was some hope. There was somebody that not like him. And so it was idolatry, worship of other gods. And this guy was a big comic book buff. And I've told you these superheroes are idols, guys. They're demons. And he did all this stuff. It's like he worshipped him like he was a god, Bruce Willis. And they wanted to lift Bruce Willis up. You notice how they all try to be nice to him and speak to him and give him all these great roles. And he's very, I mean, I'll be humble when I say it, but he's very ungrateful of his roles. He's been known to be rude and just talk down to people like he thinks he's really great. And so they're just deifying him. And then I wrote the witchcraft of Spider-Man, because after I saw Elijah Glass, I saw Spider-Man in that web. And I told you spiders represent the occult and rebellion. And he's always shooting that hell Satan, you know, and that occult stuff. And I wrote hatred of It the Clown, because It the Clown, he turned into that clown crab spider. It the Clown has been known to be a very hateful beast. That's like one of the most hateful clowns, guys, when you see the movies, how evil he is. Just how sinister and evil. The variance of the Headless Horseman. Variance means disagreement. And the guy that played the Headless Horseman was Christopher Walken. And you see him even in another movie. I wrote that. Let me see if I can see this. Headless Horseman, Variance, not in agreement with others. He fought a great war and invaded territories to keep Americans out of the yoke of England. He was very disagreeing, didn't want them to come into that land. He was very disagreeing of what they were doing, and he would, you know, use bloodshed to solve his problems. And I wrote that Walken, who played the Horseman, had a very disagreeing attitude. He was a guy that could stand against anyone. He had a shrewd, you know, kind of attitude like Max Schreck. You know, he would disagree. He would intimidate people through his disagreements. Like, oh yeah, you know, you're gonna challenge me. Oh yeah, And he was one of those guys who could get in your faces, like sort of like when you see those mafia movies, like Goodfellas or whatever. Very intimidating guy, very disagreeing. He played this guy called the Quaker, who stalks his father's killer for decades, driving the killer to suicide. The one who killed his father, he would stalk him, very disagreeing about what he did. And of course people would be disagreeing, but it's like it's intimidation, this variance is what it's giving you the picture of. So God's given you a picture out of the book of Galatians what these sins are. So disagreeing that you're going to become violent with people. And I know that because I've been in that. I wrote emulations of the Ghost Rider. This was interesting because emulations is like trying to intimidate, trying to like be like somebody to the point like it's like a bad lust. You want to be just like them. And the guy that wrote the Ghost Rider, he was inspired to make him just like Evel Knievel. And I read somewhere, I believe, that Nicolas Cage, he wanted to be just like Evel Knievel. And it's almost like the Ghost Rider guy. He wanted to be just like Evel Knievel. That's the spirit of emulation. And these all go in perfect order, these demons. These fit these perfectly. He wanted to be just like them. That's that spirit. That's what I know Ghost Rider represents now. He became so evil. He wanted to be like Evel Knievel. And he literally became evil. And then Wrath of Magneto, because look at what Magneto happened in World War II. He was so angry what happened to him. It wasn't just hatred like at the clown. It was wrath. I mean, he really took it out on the world, taking out an entire world. And he would raise up. And so I told you he raised up those people and he slammed them down. It's like, you did this to me. Your world rejected me, you know, because I was different than you. Wrath, you know, absolute wrath. And then the strife of Thor, because Thor in the comics, he's said to be stirring up strife, and he's more arrogant than he is in the movies, just drinking, causing revelry, or I should say just stirring up strife, you know, among people. And it's more than Thor. He was very arrogant in the comic and everything. He would stir up things. They kind of did a little bit of that in the movies, but stirring up strife, and he's a spirit of shame, you know. He's mocking the Lord and everything. He stirs up strife. That Thor, that crown of thorns, from that shame people feel, they go and they stir up strife with other people because their lives are so miserable. They have to stir up strife to make other people's miserable. And we've all been through that. I've been through that before. Seditions of Electro. This is very interesting, guys. Sedition is like indicting people to rebel against authority. And I wrote, yeah, that's definitely Electro. That's kind of what he did in the movie. And I saw in the screen when he's fighting Amazing Spider-Man, he was dressed like a punk, kind of, under a hood. And like that Robin Hood mentality, stealing from the rich. Robin, he was stealing from the rich and supposedly given to the poor. But it tells you almost like that V for Vendetta spirit. Question authority, rebel, and everything. And it's interesting that Jamie Foxx, and they try to, I mean, I'm going to be sensitive when I say this, but they try to use race and color of skin to get people to rebel to such a degree. And Electro was everybody's favorite. I loved him in that movie, but he represented that rebellion and that kind of youth spirit with the hood, you know, even though he's older, that spirit of rebellion, you know. So that was Seditions of Electro. And there's other movies that can show that perfectly, you know, like that could go into the heresies of Gambit. A doctrine that is not biblical is a heresy. You know, such as gambling, which is for the concept of to gamble your life away with sin or to presume you have tomorrow to repent. And that's a heresy doctrine being taught in the church, that you can just gamble with your salvation. You don't have to repent. They're introducing doctrines that once saved, always saved. These are heresies. That's that spirit of Gambit, that gambling your life away. Such people are heretics. I wrote death and heretics in the old days, they'd be burned at the stake, but God's judgment is hell. And that's why you see Gambit having that playing card on fire, that heresy. And he was in some kind of writers guild. He even had a cult group, and they even were screaming heretics over other people, but they were the biggest heretics, and he was in that group. And then, let's see if I got everything. Emulations of... And then the next one is Envies of Wolverine, because he throws that playing card as heresy at Wolverine. And that's Wolverine. I wrote Envyings of Wolverine because Wolverine was jealous, guys. He wanted to be with Scott Summers' wife. He was jealous. And that jealousy turned him into a raging beast. I mean, that's all you saw him, wanting that woman and raging, you know. And he's a spirit of hurt, you know. A lot of people get jealous. They're hurt inside and he's wounded, but he becomes like an animal. That envy, that jealousy will make you like that animal. And from that jealousy, it turned to murder. And so you see envies of Wolverine and then murders of Freddy. Freddy was very murderous. And then, killing all this people, very murderous. And then you see the drunkenness of the Dark Knight. Because people that stumble as in the night, it says as drunkards. And that darkness of sin makes you stumble like a drunkard. And Bruce Wayne, was kind of a drunk. I mean, they try to say he's not, and he's just playing the act, but he really is a drunk, He's for the spirit of drunkenness. You can't see your way when you're drunk. It's like you're in the dark. And then lastly, reverings of Elliot Spencer, because from that darkness came up those chains, and it brought you back to Elliot Spencer, the Pinhead. Revelings that basically saying in the comic book that they're neither, some say they're angels, others say they're demons, but they're just explorers, and saying almost like there's these superior beings, almost like gods. Reverings, it doesn't mean a thing, it's false. Teaching people to give up, and he was like teaching, and how they teach all those lies of like evolution and all that stuff, just reverings. And that was the 17 works of the flesh. And God was showing me this stuff, and so he put a demon's face into all of that. He gave me a demon for all that to try to represent that, and I'm going to be teaching that. This is going to be a lot more structured, guys. I didn't expect this video to be so long, guys, but now you understand what this is all about, what it represents, all this sin. I pray, I hope you stayed. If you didn't stay, please go back and watch some of this stuff, because you can, despite how many pieces there are in this, I'm going to put all this together. I'm going to write it in a very coherent way. It's mostly like how people write dreams and they come on here and they tell you what they've seen. It's choppy like that. But it's going to be written out coherently one day. Soon, I'm working on these things as fast as I can. It'll have to be within 5 years, from what he's shown me, unless I'm wrong. I mean, that's what I'm going to have everything done, certainly by then. But guys, I'm going to let you go anyways. I wanted to share with you some of this stuff. Think about it. These are the 17 works of the flesh. They're bad. Don't be in any of these sins, guys. You got to face a demon for each person representing that, so you know what to stay away from now, guys. These help flesh out and give you a real picture how ugly these sins are, as these demons are so ugly representing each of these sins. And so you don't want to be in any of these sins, guys. These are not superheroes. These are not movie characters. These are actually demons, real live demons. God just happens to be giving me a teaching way and show how these things are. That when sin, it actually tortures people. And in the spirit, they said that people were having acid thrown on them. And this is why people, their joints would ache when they would be in sin or a sexual sin or whatever, because they're being tortured, their souls. And they'd have aches and pains all over their body. Their souls are being tortured. They're in hell while they're doing these sins, literally. Their spirits, their bodies are on earth, but their souls are being tormented in hell. And that's why they would see people in hell. Their souls are already there being tormented while they're in the body, on earth. And so it's saying, get out of these sins, And you don't want to be given over these demons, because all this that I've written isn't just crazy nightmare. It's what hell was like, guys. Hell was far worse than this. I'm just giving you, it's kind of showing you how each of these represent these things. And these demons torture people in these ways and much worse. This is almost like a censored version of tortures which demons do. But anyways, I'm going to let you go, guys. I love you. I'm praying for you. Just check this stuff out. Look at it, study it, and pray about it for your life, guys. I love you guys. I'm going to let you go. Till next time. Shalom.